So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the difference between the traditional services and the self-determination program opportunities and how it's a little bit different. So we know in the traditional system that they use person-centered strategies, right, at the regional centers, or that's what they share with families that they're doing. They use those to create the IPP, the individual program plan. At the regional center, those services that meet the goals that exist within the IPP are vendor providers only. At present, those vendors do not have to meet the HCBS compliance rule, settings rule. That final rule is that all services and supports happen in the community in an integrated fashion. Okay. Now, the rule exists right now for HCBS compliance in the self-determination program. The self-determination program is funded with an HCBS waiver through the Centers for Medicare Services. And so it is a requirement that we're meeting that rule now. Traditional services, those vendors have a couple of years still to meet that settings rule. Okay, so that's a little difference between the traditional and the self-determination program. And then what limits most in the traditional services area is that all of the services have to be from vendors who are currently in the traditional system, right? So you might be able to get a socialization class. You might be able to get a need met for respite, and respite is what respite is, and that is the only way it can be used. Personal assistance, pre-vocational supports in some way, like to help with once you are out of the school system. All right. Sometimes they have day programs, and those are often segregated settings, and that's an issue with the HCBS compliance that could be problematic going forward in the traditional system. So if that's something you're already doing, that could be different. It could look different going forward. Let's see, limited services between ages 3 and 22. Some regional centers offer tons of respite for families. Some of them offer almost none. It depends. Every regional center is different. If you're at Lanterman or you're at Kern or you're at ELARC, they all have different ways of providing those services. Now in the self-determination program, the one that we have over on this, the one we have on this side of the page, we have person-centered planning from the beginning, and you can hire a person-centered planner with the 024 funding that exists. So let's say after this class, you don't feel like you're still ready to do this on your own. You want to go out and hire somebody. You have $2,500 to do that at the regional center right now. That means anybody who was in the original rollout, that lottery rollout system, or anybody who just wants to move into the self-determination program. Everybody has access to the $2,500. The May revision of the governor's budget put something like $2.5 million aside for that. Now, that means if that's something you want to do, you want to make sure you do it soon, because once that money is exhausted, I don't know that there'll be more. So person-centered planning can be funded. You don't have to come up with $2,500. You can use up to, you don't have to use all of it, but you can use up to that amount for those supports to transition into the program. The IPP still exists. Your service coordinator still helps you with that. It's still a thing, okay? The regional center still has to approve what you're doing. They still have to follow their guidelines and make sure they're not breaking any laws. But this is a big difference. Now you can use both the vendored services. For example, my beloved Club 21, they have Club Fun. If that's something that you want to put into your program, that vendored thing can be put into your programming. There are also non-vendored providers. For example, maybe I want to hire a community integrator to help my daughter integrate better into social settings and practice her social skills. That person provides me with rest, right? The idea of respite, but that person is instead of me, the one helping her do that, I get the respite, she gets the socialization at the same time. Okay. So those non-vendored providers are things I find myself or my independent facilitator, whom I hire for my daughter. I do this too. I hire somebody to work with my daughter so that I am not the only set of eyes on her program. And all of the vendored and non-vendored providers in self-determination must meet the HCBS final rule. That's that in an integrated setting. And many organizations have already filled out their HCBS compliance. And if they haven't, you just need to ask them, is this like, figure out that part. We can talk more about that later. Now there's an individual budget and a spending plan in the self-determination program. That individual budget is based on the past 12 months spending, the unmet needs that exist already, could be tons from COVID, right? During the COVID pandemic, you might have had authorizations for things that you really need, but you couldn't find a provider. And then the changes in circumstances. Let's say you just graduated from high school, you just got into your own apartment, you just entered puberty. Those kinds of changes in circumstances can also impact your budget. Now, the impact of the budget could go up or the impact could go down. It's not supposed to be like a trick or something, but if you don't have a need anymore, the idea is that the regional center shouldn't be funding for something that's not a need. And then you can have an independent facilitator if you want to, but you don't have to. Okay. You can hire somebody to do that. And it could be the same person who does your person-centered planning with you. Different independent facilitators have different expertise, different levels of service, different wages that they charge, different rates. And then the financial management service is the one thing that has to be vendored by the regional center system. And so there's a list for each regional center of the FMSs that have been approved for each regional center on the DDS website. So that one's dds.ca.gov. And there's a link to that in our class. So hopefully this helps a little bit talk about the differences between the traditional services and the self-determination program.